As Muna mentioned, my name is Hanan Jarrar. Very pleased to be here today to be moderating this debate, and we're very happy and pleased to have you with us today. Today, the topic that we're going to talk about is climate change. Before we go deep into the definition of climate change, I just want to highlight that there was a survey that took place in 2022. It surveyed about 1,827 Jordanians from 12 different governorates around Jordan. Now, the main topic of this survey was to test Jordanians' attitudes and behaviors towards climate change. And the results were actually very worrying because 46% of Jordanians, of respondents actually, did not know what climate change was or did not know anything about climate change. So this is our opportunity to shed the light on this topic and have this discussion. So to introduce climate change, what is climate change? Now, according to the United Nations, climate change refers to the long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. Now, these shifts may be natural, such as variations in the solar cycle, but since the 1800s, human activities have been the main driver for these changes in climate. Now, by generating greenhouse gas emissions that act like a blanket wrapped around the Earth, which actually traps the heat of the sun and raises temperatures. So there are two strategies to tackle climate change. It's either you mitigate or you adapt. Mitigation actually tackles the cause of climate change. It's a human intervention to reduce the sources of emission of greenhouse gas, which prevents increasing temperatures at the end. But adaptation is actually tackles the effects. It's the adjustment. It's how we adjust in responding to climate change. Now, climate change in Jordan has serious impacts on water resources. That's why the country needs to adapt and prepare for this impact to be able to face it. Now, our question today is, can Jordanians adapt to climate change? We have two teams to answer this. Should we start by introducing our debaters, which I have to flag, they are Newton Khalidi Fund awardees, and they have great experience in climate change issues. Now, the first team, Team 1, will be debating that Jordanians can adapt to climate change. I'm going to introduce Dr. Hissam Khassaoune. He's the chairman of the National Center of Innovation, and Dr. Sidqi Hamdan, a researcher in environmental studies and sustainable development. He's also an expert in green entrepreneurship, and Dr. Sana Izzoud, an associate professor in geology and the dean of Earth and Environmental Sciences faculty at Al Bayt University. Welcome. Team 2. Second team will be debating that Jordanians can't adapt to climate change. And Dr. Ahlam is shaking her head already. We have Dr. Mohammed Matou, a professor in chemical engineering and academic expert in environment. Dr. Ashraf Ali, an academic and researcher expert in machine learning, irrigation projects and Internet of Things solution, and Dr. Ahlam al-Sharif, an academic and researcher specializing in sustainability, energy efficiency, and user interactions. Now, I would just like to highlight that for today, our debaters will be on their personal capacity as scientists and academics. They do not represent their organizations. Ready for the first round? We have the first round is the opening statements. We have 5 minutes for each team to present their opening statement, and the timer behind me will be counting down. Now, please go ahead.
What's the objective of listening to both teams at the end? Now, I listened to the adaptation and listened to this team.
Yes. I'm sorry, that was a bit loud.
Expected result.
So they're going to actually debate this, and you have to evaluate them at the end and see, and if they convince you that Jordanians can adapt or can't adapt. We have a link at the end where you can vote for which team convinced you, and hopefully by doing this debate we'll raise some awareness and people will know more about climate change. Thank you. So to start the first round and to decide which team is going to start first, we're going to actually toss a coin the Jordanian way. So please choose picture or writing or heads or tails.
Writing.
Writing? Picture, there's no other choice. Okay, I hope this doesn't fall. It's bad.
Okay.
One more time. Picture.
Picture, right?
So team one will start. You have 5 minutes to present your opening statement, and once the timer starts, you may start. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
It's no, this is better. So, excuse me, I'll be reading from. We arranged our thoughts in written so that we don't exceed the time. Adaptation aims to reduce our risks from the harmful effects of climate change, like sea level rise, more intense extreme weather events, or food insecurity. It also includes making the most of any potential beneficial opportunities associated with climate change, like longer growing seasons in agriculture or increased yields in some regions. Adapting to climate change is changing the lifestyle of the people to minimize the impact of climate change. Adaptation is about risk reduction, the pursuit of opportunity, and rethinking options, planning, and behavior. Adaptation is a concept that Jordanians have experienced for a very long. Jordan is a country that has always suffered from limited water, energy, and natural resources. However, Jordanians could successfully face these challenges and excel amongst other countries in the region. Literacy in Jordan is very high, and educated people are the vast majority of Jordanians. We love going to school and we love science. Making Jordanians believe in science, in technology, in modeling, and in facts. Therefore, Jordanians understand and recognize climate change and its effects. For example, Jordanians understand the negative effect of greenhouse gases, emissions or emitted from the combustion of fossil fuels. They understand the negative effect of that on the climate. They believe that becoming green is the only choice towards sustainability in a country that lacks the majority of natural resources. Jordanians are excellent at reserving resources by nature. Being the second country in scarcity of fresh water, for example, the people of Jordan adopt methods of water harvesting, reservation, and water reuse. This also, and this is a good point I want to mention, this also has roots in the culture and the religions here in Jordan, whether Islam or Christianity. Of so many generations, Jordanians, they reserve resources because this is one of the good deeds and encouraged actions by the culture and the religions. So our group, in our group, we truly believe that Jordanians by nature and by culture can adapt to climate change. This is our opening statement.
You have 1 minute 30 seconds left if you would like to add anything.
I think that's it, yeah.
Thank you. Timer is set. Team 2, you can start.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me, please? Yes. We decided to split the introductory part among the three of us. I would start myself. Well, actually, we believe as a team that worldwide climate change. Yeah. Is it better now? All right. Yeah. Good morning again. So we'll split the introductory part among the three of us. Well, worldwide, we believe that climate change has been affecting all the humanity since ever. And when it comes into the developing countries, it's even more challenging, where we believe that developing countries need to reduce its fingerprint in terms of the carbon fingerprint, and try at the same time to sustain and continue the development plans. So when it comes to reducing the expenses, the unnecessary expenses, or directing the resources toward the more stressed economical and development areas, and dealing as well with poverty and dealing with the raised unemployment rate, it's quite challenging. On top of that, if you want to impose the social justice in terms of giving more chances for the poorer and lifting them up from the poverty and providing chances and increasing the income rate for them to be more productive in the community, at the same time to influence or to convince the richer social classes to change their consumption and lifestyle in order to be less contributing into the carbon fingerprint. By the way, they are the most contributors into it, directly or indirectly. And at the same time, not to convince the middle class layer to follow the consumption trends of the richer people is quite challenging for the country in order as a plan to manage and to do. Well, this bottom-up change actually needs a mindset change. It's before even speaking about the country's or governmental policies over the nationwide. So we believe that mitigation is a better option for Jordan for now. Absolutely, we need to adapt at the end, but speaking about the current stage where we are living in right now, then we need to mitigate in order to buy time and to have more space for us to better set the legislations and to have the readiness and to have the awareness among the community in order to reach to the optimum goal. So I am here representing, I'm here along with our team here trying to provide evidences on their views and to try to convince you about this point. Myself, I will speak more about the technology. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Oh. Can you hear me? Okay. Most of you probably feel comfortable agreeing with the fact that the world can adapt to climate change. This assumption satisfies us and makes us feel safe, right? So we tend to be confident about our abilities to confront extreme situations. This is driven by the significant research that we're doing and the power of science that will overcome any future challenges, no matter how big they are. The assumption is dangerous because it underestimates the complexities and the unpredictabilities of our future. So basically, we are here to argue that no matter how much effort is put into supporting world adaptation, if no comprehensive coordination work is made now, if no immediate action is taken to spread awareness and value the hidden agenda, we will not be able to adapt to climate change. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Only 1 minute?
No, this one working.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much. I have only 1 minute to talk. I will tell you something that, okay? Adaptation, and as you can see, I will talk about the global. When we see the global in terms of global, since 1990, we can say that carbon dioxide emission up to this point, 70% increase, not decrease. Although we have agreement, protocol, Kyoto Protocol, Montreal Protocol, Paris Agreement, last one. With all of these efforts, we have only 70% increase in CO2 emission globally. I can imagine that what will happen in Jordan, for example, about the emission of CO2. And I will tell you one point. If we measure the catastrophe, disaster happened in the world, you can imagine that because of the CO2 emission, and this because the increase of CO2, the global warming, the impact of the climate change. I will not talk more.
Thank you. Now we will move to the second round. The second round where each team will have a chance to prove their point of view and challenge each other. Each team will have 10 minutes to present their main argument, and then the other team will present their main argument, and then each team will have a challenge questions for the other team, where the other team will have 2 minutes to reassess and then 5 minutes to answer this question. Clear? Okay. Team 1, you may start.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I could start with the climate change history. So the climate change did not start, recently, but began in ancient geological eras that predate human civilizations very slowly and with non-detectable clues. That is why it cannot be considered the result of the Industrial Revolution, but rather it is a set of changes that were and are still going through geological history on the planet due to geological activities like volcanoes or earth movements, and recently by the human activities. In the 4.6 billion years of Earth age, humans were created in the last thousands of years when the life conditions had been stabilized. The geological events still happened, but in a more adapted rhythm by humans. Therefore, humans are used to adapting to survive. Jordanians, as mentioned previously by Dr. Hussam, has had lots of life challenges as a part of this world, with some extra specific geopolitics challenges in the area. The successive refugee, for example, the successive refugee flux for decades is one of the obvious challenges faced by Jordanians, and they are adapting with the refugees also in such situations to manage all resources with the limited availability. Another idea comes from lots of evidence throughout recent and ancient history shows how the Jordanians adapted to climate change and its effect on several resources like water, agricultural and natural resources in the ecosystem. We can obviously find clear evidence through history that proves that Jordanians 100 years ago were the best example of adapting to the surrounding conditions, whether they were natural or man-made conditions. We found in the history lots of indications confirm the Jordanian adaptation capacity. I could mention that they were doing to store water in their homes or in the ground storage. How they started water also, however, they started water harvesting in the desert with a very simple earth dams for collecting surface water. Also, the Jordanians were thought about food preservation methods for themselves and also for their communities. I could say that Jordanians made with the early innovation thinking the optimal use of the available limited sources. It was also mentioned in the history that the Jordanians, even before the Industrial Revolution in the 70s, were seeking self-sufficiency through changing lifestyle, which depends on adapting to the limited resources of livestock, water and crops. So they had a seasonal moving in the desert from place to place to adapt the existing resources and are consciously consumed in order to adapt to their limited availability. Therefore, based on what were all mentioned facts, we recognize that the adaptation of Jordanians to their resources is not a result of a climate change adaptation only, but rather it's a skill acquired throughout history due to the nature and harshness of their life in the desert and the limited resources availability in Jordan. Jordanians realize if they don't adapt to climate change, their better life chances will be definitely reduced.
Good morning, everybody. I want to start for the Jordanian adaptation for climate change. I want to show us about 4 sectors. One of the sectors, it is the waste sector's contribution around 80% of the green gas emissions. In Jordan, the generation of the solid waste in Jordan around 3,500 ton per year. Around 5% of the total solid waste in Jordan, it is recycled, 5%. And also regarding the recycle offered saving resource from the waste container and landfill and waste bakeries is the main recycling activity in Jordan, and include material such as plastic and copper and metal, and another issues is aluminium, and cardboard from the waste container and dump waste. The waste bakers, it is scrap and dealers, and some as will be increased the rising awareness related about the informal sectors in Jordan. Now will be go to adaptation regarding about the increase the awareness regarding about the solid waste management. And also another sectors, it is very important to adapt the climate change related Jordanian agriculture and food security. It is improving the drought management system in Jordan, and also improving the irrigation system efficiency, and also shifting to water efficient crops, supporting hydroponic and other water agriculture production system, enhancing the productivity of rangeland management, and improving the sustainability productivity of food Chinese. Another sectors will be also the success for adaptive, the Jordanian water resource management, integrated the climate adaptation and resilience in the policy and institutional reform in the water sectors. Another one also improve the water demand and management and reduce the gap between water demand and water supply. Enhancing to use the water efficiency technology, household and business level in the Arabian and rural area. Another sectors will be contribute to adaptation of climate change. It is the electric mobility. Now in Jordan we have success story to increase the electric vehicles in Jordan. Now will be the Jordanian consider the pioneer in electric cars mobility more than 31,830. Now electric vehicles are found in the street of the Jordanian 2021. They're driven by both the low price of the electric cars compared with the confidential fuel consumption and exception generated of the consumed duty and license tax. However, the approach infrastructure will be electric cars owners find waiting 1.5 hours of the charging station and miss the opportunity advice to maintenance. If you go to compare between the electric vehicles and the electric fuels, you can find the different issues related about the price for charging and related about the fuel consumption, because the price the fuel it is very high.
Yeah. As I mentioned in the introduction, that our debate is about mitigation. We really support mitigation, not because we are a mitigation team. We are really convinced in that. And this is because the main obstacle to deploy mitigation techniques was that we are not industrial states. We are not a developed country in terms of industry. However, speaking about the 4G and the fourth generation industrial revolution that our opponent team has just mentioned, the good news that the migration from the third generation to the fourth generation was easier for the developing countries. Why is that? Look at 5G technologies, for example. 5G technologies is deployed in Africa, in MENA region, and in Asia. Why is that? Because it mainly relies on the high-tech semiconductor industry. So it's becoming cheaper, it's becoming more affordable over the individual level and over the state level. And also it's more usable. We are heavily reliant on technology. So the culture of technology is widely spread among the public and the farming community and the normal people. You don't need rocket science in order to get it deployed within affordable prices. So once this obstacle has already overpassed, then we believe that we can use this technology in order to change the mindset that I just mentioned at the beginning. How we can do that? By, for example, I will just mention part of our projects that we are doing here in smart irrigation. We are developing sensors and we are using IoT and machine learning in order to tell the farmers, please use those technologies over your assets and try to get use of the data. It's now the power of the data, it's not the power of the machines itself. So once I have a thorough understanding of the data itself, then I will be able to tailor solutions based on my needs, speaking about the individual levels and speaking about the country states policy level. So once this happens, then the mindset will gradually occurs and change day after day, month after the other. So once we get that proper awareness and once we have that readiness in terms of technology and the community needs, then we will be able to gradually adapt. I don't believe that we can adapt because the climate change is in fast pace that we can't really wait, similar to our ancestors. For example, dinosaurs couldn't adapt due to a hit happened to the planet. This is one of the theories, right? So, however, if they had the time, probably they will be ruling us and we are meals on top of their tables, right? So technology is everywhere. We are trying to get use of that technology in order to better adapt to those solutions. I will not explain more about it. I'll just leave to my colleagues to explain more about their views. Thank you.
So what we are saying is that the interdependencies and uncertainties are huge. There is a huge complexity in aligning multiple aspects, such as the economic, the social, the historical, the institutional, all these issues in adaptation, as each one might directly or indirectly affect each other. This also applies on sectors. So, for example, if we say the agricultural sector, adaptation in this sector will affect and hold extreme consequences in other sectors, such as health and economy. It's very hard to predict how the consequences of adaptive measures might exacerbate the initial effect as well. The effects of climate change and the ways of adaptation are changeable and unpredictable. Since climate change is accelerating, it's hard to rely on the previous examples of adaptation or the current scientific predictions of what will happen in the future. This is basically because even the current predictions are not even promising. We have currently around 5 million people dying from climate change. And the expectations is that between 2030 and 2050, climate change is expected to cause approximately quarter additional deaths per year, which doesn't show at all that humans are designed for adaptation if we have these kind of numbers, or they are not designed for adaptation if we have this type of acceleration in climate change. We believe also that if no appropriate measures are taken to involve excluded people from the agenda, we have excluded people here, the results will be catastrophic and adaptation will be a cause of injustice. Injustice for the poor, who will not be able to take similar measures as the rest. Injustice for people who have health issues, the elderly, the children, who can't act in similar ways that other people act. Injustice also for people who live in severe climatic areas, namely in deserts and coastal areas that already we have in Jordan, because the type of danger they will confront will be in a way or another different. Most importantly, we risk jeopardizing intergenerational justice. Coming generations who were not involved in the decisions and choices in adaptive measures, but find themselves obliged to tolerate and deal with them because of our decisions right now. We argue that Jordan, in its current state, is not yet ready for adaptation, and it unfortunately can't adapt if no efforts were made to ensure proper coordination between all stakeholders, if a comprehensive amount of people were still excluded from the agenda, and if no awareness is spread, not about what adaptation is, but about what climate change is in the first place.
Thank you. It's my turn. I'm a person believe in numbers because nobody can say anything against numbers. I will tell you, in Jordan, we have three major issues related to the climate change: extreme temperature, water shortage, and flash flood. This is the main issue related to Jordan. I will take an example, just tell you about the energy. In Jordan, we have the main CO2 emitter in Jordan is the energy sector. Energy sector contribute to 76% of green gas emission. And the largest energy consumer in 2018, just an example, was transportation. You know, in Jordan we have transportation. This sector contribute to 50% of carbon emission by this sector, only transportation. Household contributed 22%, and industrial 15%. This rely on fossil fuel. Another example, if we take the transportation, we are say about home industry, we rely on electricity. In Jordan, we generate electricity by natural gas this year by 2020. Natural gas contribution, 52% energy generation, electricity generation. It's expected by 2030, it will be 61%, 10%. Another thing, if we are taking the renewable energy in Jordan that produced by electricity in 2020, we have 20% contribution of renewable energy to electricity. By 2030, it will be 31. You can see 10%, 10% for 10 years. Is it enough? This is a question for you. With these ideas, I have 2 minutes. With these ideas, statistically, we can see that I'm not optimistic that within 2 decades we will reduce CO2 emission in Jordan with this policy and strategy. I will tell you another example. Jordan shortage of water is a proven evidence. 5% of Jordan arable area is only 5%, and it's decreasing and declining. With the shortage of water, we are expecting that the droughts, according to the United Nations recent reports, that Jordan is facing a drought every 2.4 cycle, for 10 years, 2.3 droughts rate in Jordan. The expectation with the climate change will be every 10 years, every 5 years, we'll have 5 droughts. I hope it's clear that every 5 years we have a drought. Imagine that with this report and this statistical data, what will happen. Water shortage. Water rainfall is decreasing, evaporation is increasing. We don't have enough water resources. Water is still in loss. Evaporation is high with extreme temperature, higher. Land for agriculture will be in decline. Rainfall is not stable and even less. What will be our food security if we are talking about food? Because Jordan is relying on agriculture for food. So our food endangers, security food. Our water is dangerous. Our energy is producing a lot of CO2 gas emission, and this contribution will keep on. I'm not optimistic. This will be a declination in carbon or green gas emission. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Now, for the challenging question, Team 2, are you ready to ask Team 1 your challenge question?
Challenge question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you. I just want to ask our opponents here that giving the examples that you provided, where civilizations used to adapt to climate change and the human beings are designed to adapt to climate change, we understand that, yes, we can adapt, but to slow changes over longer time periods. Now, when it comes to climate change, we know that it's going in a faster pace compared to any time happened ever in history. So do you still believe that we can adapt to such changes, or do you think that you agree with us, and I think you will not agree anyways, that we need still time to mitigate the effects, and then we will start a proper plan for adaptation? Thank you so much.
Now, Team 2 will have 2 minutes to recess so they can prepare their answer to the question. Okay, so Team 1 will have 5 minutes now to respond to Team 2's question.
Thank you for the question. Sorry. Thank you for the question. And I think the answer is yes. So we could, as a Jordanian, adapt to the climate change because we have a lot of help and a lot of tools to adapt. For example, I could say that the technology available, and that's something you already mentioned, the available technology now could help us in adapting. Either it was softwares, either it was tools or devices or whatever we have on the individual sensors, for example, on the individual scale or even institutional scale. The other thing, the education system in Jordan is considered to be very qualitative system. So it's also could help to make people, the educated people, also more adaptive to climate change. The third thing is health system. The health system also in Jordan is one of the, let's say, at least in MENA region, is one of the most clever and applicable and practiced health system. So it's also could be a tool for adapting climate change effects. The other things is the commitment on individual, institutional, and also governmental scale. So the commitments, either it's written or either it's regarding the conferences, policies, strategic policy. All these commitments on several scales also could help us to adapt as a Jordanians to adapt to climate change. I could also wrap up by there is a green roadmap already designed by individuals, academics, and also the government in Jordan to adapt in the coming decades. So the answer is yes, and we have a lot of tools to adapt.
Yeah, well, so the question was about the speed of climate change is increasing, but then the speed of technology is increasing, the speed of education and online education is increasing, so they're going together exponentially. So I think we can adapt, even though the climate change is speeding up. The other aspects that Dr. Sanat mentioned is also exponentially speeding up. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Team 1, for answering the question, and Team 2 for your question. It's now your turn to ask them the question, so I will give the microphone back.
Okay, so our question to Team 2 is that you guys mentioned some scary numbers, about 5 million people dying a year, and the droughts happening very frequently, and other challenges. So Jordan being one of the, as we said, like very challenged country in terms of natural resources, water, energy, and other things. And according to your argument, Jordanians cannot adapt to climate change. Jordan is very poor with natural resources. So how could you explain that we still exist and we could build a successful country given these very scary numbers, like in terms of deaths, in terms of droughts, of flash floods and other challenges? How we could manage it for this very long time and we're still building a good, successful country? Thank you.
Team 2, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you indeed for your question. When it comes to technology, I just answer this bit, please. Actually, when we mention the technology as an example, then we refer to technology as a tool to be used for now as a mitigation technique in order to change the consumption habits and to let the decision makers come up with the plans. I can't rely on technology as part of my adaptation skills. When it comes to adaptation, it's a change that happens inside our genes. We are what we are actually in terms of the description and the precise characteristics of our genes and DNAs. So if this doesn't reflect into our behavior and last for the next generations without technology, then this is what I really call adaptation. But with technology, I can't rely on something that's man-made, to be honest. Thank you.
I really like the fact that we mention the reliance on science, the educational system, the health system, the commitment that we have in Jordan. This is perfect. We're a successful country and we are proud of that. But we can't ignore the communities. We can't ignore the fact that we have a heterogeneous community in Jordan, full of people that are educated or uneducated, rich, poor, ignorant, knowledgeable, all of these kind of people. We can't look in general. These numbers are not from us. These numbers are based on research, and these numbers are scary, actually. That's saying that people are really dying. We can't ignore these people that can't adapt, and that they are dying because they are excluded or because of multiple reasons. And we say, okay, we're happy. We are a successful country, and we have education system and all of these kind of things. Thank you.
Thank you. And, it's my time to talk about the numbers again. According to the global population statistical, by 2050 there will be 3 billion people in the world. The number of population will be increased by only 30 years. So we will not be died, don't worry. If we are thinking about the natural resources, as you said, I didn't say that our natural resources is limited or affected by the climate change. We have natural resources, but we don't utilize it. Renewable energy is an example. As I told you, that in Jordan by 2030 there will be the increase 31%. 1% every year we are increasing using the renewable energy. We have natural resources, but we don't use it. If we have another thing, water is natural resources. Do you think natural resources of water will be increased in the coming future? No. Because we have water deficit. This summer was terrible to Jordan. Last summer was impossible. Without water, we will not have food. Without water, we don't have clean and health. Health is very important, very affected by water. Water resources, without water resources, the health will be in danger. A lot of rain, there will be a lot of typhoid, the malaria, and a lot of diseases. This will be increased number of the impact of the climate change. I will tell you another number by recent report by Munich CATS Service. It's catastrophe service. First half of this year, $65 billion disaster happened in the world. We paid 65 billions. Last year we paid 100 billion. So natural resources and technology, even technology doesn't help America last week in Florida to protect themselves from the hurricane. They didn't help us last year in Jordan when we had flash flood in Jordan. There is no technology. We have natural resources. We have a problem. We have statistical data. We cannot adapt.
You have 54 seconds if you would like to add anything else.
Yes, if you allow me. Do you need more numbers? I have. As I can see, it's not an individual. It's a global problem, and we already realize, all of us, we realize we have a climate change. I can't say like Shakespeare, to be or not to be. Within this statistical data, and this statistical data, it's very good because it's an alarm, alert you that you have to take care. Based on this data, you can prepare yourself or you can adapt. But we don't know how long time you have to take to adapt. And believe me, the climate change is really accelerated, it's very high. In 1990, we are talking about mitigation. By 10 years, we are talking about adaptation. I don't know what the next.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed, and thank you everyone for our debaters to answer each other's questions. Now we're going to resume our program for today, and this is the third and final round. It's the closing statements, where you have to wrap up everything in your closing statement. So we'll start with Team 1.
I want to start about the Jordanian government has adopted the Green Growth Plan 2021 and 2025, which was developed by the Ministry of Environmental with the support of the Global Green Growth Plan GGGI. The plan applies green growth to Jordanian practical approach that build upon existing government strategy primary vision 2025 and demonstrate pathway to achieve them in sustainable way. The plan covers 6 green sectors. One of the sectors, agriculture sectors and transportation sectors and water sectors, and also the tourism sectors and waste sectors. Also the Ministry of Environmental has issued the Waste Management Framework Law and Climate Change Regulation that regulate the activity and adapting the climate change, mitigate a negative impact and reduce the green gas emission. The green finance help in solving financial issues of the many economical challenge that have an edge in climate change adaptation. In this year, the Jordan will be an increase the contribution of the NDCs from 14% to 31%. And that will be help us to bring many of the financial support from many of the donors.
Let me speak about research and development and their role in climate change adaptation. So research, development, and innovation, we like to now say the 3 items. The research, development, and innovation provides powerful discovery, knowledge, and insights that leads to cutting-edge improvements in existing products, processes, and services, where the efficiency can be increased and the costs can be cut or reduced. It enables researchers and entrepreneurs to develop new products and services to allow it to survive and thrive in challenging circumstances. So therefore, the research, development, and innovation in climate change adaptation plays a very important and vital role in how the humanity is dealing and will deal with the pressuring issues related to climate change. In Jordan, all the funding agencies of research, development, and innovation have climate change adaptation set as one of their priorities. For example, the Scientific Research and Innovation Fund that is affiliated with the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research has priorities related to water management and desalination, renewable energy and energy efficiency, transportation technologies, waste management, nanotechnology applications related to the environment, and many other topics that are related to climate change. Similarly, the National Center for Research and Development, NCRD, that is affiliated with the Higher Council for Science and Technology that I represent today, set 2 priorities for funding, health and food security in Jordan. In addition, this very exact place that we're sitting at, the National Agricultural Research Center, has a dedicated incubator very promising incubator for innovative ideas in agricultural technologies and food security. So these examples are clearly shows that Jordanians or Jordanian researchers get funded and can work on ideas that support the adaptation of climate change. This is very, very obvious and solid. So we hopefully that we will have, or like the outcome of these researches and innovation ideas will have enormous impact on the accumulative national efforts in the adaptation of climate change.
So I could say, as I mentioned in the round two, that the Jordanians had historically adapted with several challenges and geopolitical circumstances around the country. The climate change, which could be not limited, but include the increasing temperature, scarcity of water sources, energy sources deficiency, and also lack of forests, agriculture, crops, and pastures, are integrated in Jordanian life as really a very big challenge. So climate change is a real threat facing Jordanian as a part of a global disaster. Therefore, the Jordanians realize that the adaptation with the climate change is the only chance for better life and guarantee their survival in such unstabilized ecosystems. So Jordanians are adapting with the climate change because they have no choice to survive without a complete adaptation with the climate change. So the adaptation for Jordanians is a must rather than a choice. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Team 1, for your closing statement. We'll reset the timer to 10 minutes so Team 2 can begin. Team 2, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can you hear? It's clear?
Yeah.
Okay, we come to the conclusion and wrap up, and I will give you some points, and you can decide it on these facts. First of all, as we said in the beginning, with all of our efforts, our global, internationally and locally, to make protocols, agreement, blah, 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 we couldn't reach to the temperature reduction. I'm not talking about disaster and catastrophe, only temperature reduction, no agreement. All the people basically when we are saying climate change, managing the climate change and the disaster that are occurring from the climate change, people are, climate change management is viewed as an expensive, and it poses what we call a collective action problems. So there is no solution, they said. But if we are thinking about the disaster, the cost of the disaster that we are now facing, 65 billions, 100 billions of the year. If we invest this money to protect our environment, it will be cheaper than managing the disaster. So adaptation, still we have to work a lot in order to adapt. Even with this a lot of amount of money, a lot of agreement, we couldn't adapt up to this month. I will say a few lines. Jordan relies on international financial aids. In its current situation, with our national debt, I don't think any adaptation or mitigation even can be implemented in the short term. I'm not optimistic that we can face climate change effects without securing well enough funds to adapt to climate change. We cannot adapt, we don't have money. I will let you or share with you 4 questions only. Remember them. We have abundant sunny days in Jordan. 300 days is sunny, but we do not utilize them in the proper way. Renewable energy, 10%. We don't have enough water, and the situation will be worse in the coming future. We don't have enough crops, and the situation is not better in the coming future with water shortage. We don't have enough fund to meet the climate change adaptation and process. Thank you.
To close, I want to emphasize that the question is not whether we have to adapt or not. We all know that we have to adapt at one point or another, and we don't have any choice, as they said to us, but it's not the question. The question is, can we really adapt right now with the current challenges? This is the question. And another question, what about putting money and efforts in preparation, mitigation, and all the taken measures before adaptation, before jumping miles forward for taking adaptation, right? So these issues become more dangerous considering the case of Jordan, because we know that in Jordan currently, with all these kind of advancements that we have, there is lack of coordination of responsibilities, lack of joint up efforts, which renders it difficult to deal with the challenges, and also if we have multiple threats at the same time. The issue of justice and ethics is a lasting challenge in the context of Jordan, because it is comprised of a heterogeneous community, as we said before, rich, poor, elderly, youth, knowledgeable, ignorant, and so on and so forth. Before closing this statement, I would like to mention another challenge, which is the behavioral issues of adaptation resulting from the complete change in lifestyles that we are used to, and the significant change in even the meaning of a human living, imposing the question on how to promote adaptation socially and culturally on macro, not only macro scales, but also on the micro scales, which is much harder. If the issue of inclusion of society to act in the face of a climate change is not resolved yet, how would the more extreme issue of adaptation, which is inherently connected to human living, lifestyles, health, economic status, to name a few of the issues, will be acted upon? Now, Jordan is part of the global agenda, and without saying any results, there was a similar debate to this one, and this is really good because we have similar debate in Jordan, and there are similar debates that has been conducted previously, and last one was last summer, and it was about can human adapt to climate change worldwide. I'm not going to say the results, but I will say that there were huge arguments from great scientists arguing we can't, because we need to take more measures before thinking of or starting to think about adaptation, and because it poses lots of problems of coordination, awareness, intersectionalities, uncertainties, unpredictabilities, and so on. Now, if the world poses this challenge about the readiness of adaptation, do we in Jordan believe that we can adapt? Thank you.
Well, I may sum up all the points that I mentioned, that technology such as machine learning and Internet of Things will buy us time. At the end, we need to adapt. But can we tolerate the losses or the cost of starting the adaptation without having proper awareness, without having proper planning, without having the needed legislation, the top-bottom legislation, or the bottom-up, the other way, awareness and readiness in the community? I believe that we are not yet ready to start the adaptation process. Well, I can as well mention some analogies where in the pandemic, for example, it was a disaster like happened all of a sudden, right? So we expect that humanity can adapt to such situation. If we waited for like 10 years, if we have lost like 500 million, half billion, probably at the end we'll adapt. But can we tolerate that? Can we manage to live with such emotional catastrophe? And we all lost our relatives and beloved ones during this disaster. So what we have done, we used mitigation somehow. We tried to enforce a vaccine, social distancing, and etc. We didn't leave people just simply to get infected and to lose them. Well, some countries will follow that approach, obviously, but there has been a debate and back forth in order to come up with a hybrid approach at the end. So adaptation is not a direct solution for us. When it comes to the ancient civilizations, like there has been example given by our opponent team about the gathering of water and the rainfall, etc. Well, you know what? Yes, they came up with solutions back then, which is quite equivalent to the technological tools that we are using right now. But what happened, for example, during the Nabatean civilization? An earthquake happened, that system has collapsed, and no one could survive. So we haven't noticed any similar architecture in any other place or in a different era. It's just one era in that period of time, in that window, and it disappeared. So those who went into extinction didn't have the chance to tell their stories because they went into extinction. So there's no winners. Like it's only who survived who told what they have experienced, and they just passed this over generations. So I rely on technology, and I'm pretty sure that if we, as Jordanians, let's speak about us, because this is all about what's the Jordanians' plans for the future. If we try to use the technology to change our attitudes and behaviors, for example, having a shower for 15 minutes would probably consume around, based on local studies, around 100 liters of water. So having smart meters that's deployed in our homes to notify us and tell us that you are using tremendous amount of water, and you'd better use it for drinking and for other useful, more prioritized usage, then this will definitely change my mindset as a user, as a normal user. I never realized that while taking that shower. So it's good to change our attitude through technology, but then let's get rid of that technology and leave people act by their own. And they will definitely follow that as if there were sensors and technology by themselves. Thank you so much. Yeah, sure.
You have 30 seconds.
I want to tell a joke.
Go ahead.
We succeed in vaccination for the COVID. Can we succeed to find the vaccine for climate change?
Well, thank you both teams for providing your closing statements. And thank you for this great discussion and great debate. Just to wrap up and summarize really quickly, Team 1 argued that Jordanians can adapt to climate change. Dr. Sana took us through the history and told us that the history indicates that Jordanians can adapt, gave us the example of water storage and the skills that we've acquired through history. Dr. Sidqi talked us through the waste management, highlighted the agriculture and food scarcity, the water scarcity and efficiency, and the success stories of the electric mobility. And Dr. Hussam spoke about the research, development, and innovation and their role in climate change. Team 2 has argued that Jordanians can't, they're busy taking pictures now. Team 2 has argued that Jordanians cannot adapt to climate change, at least not now in the short term. So their solution is to mitigate. Dr. Ashraf mentioned the culture of technology and how we use it to change the mindset. Dr. Ahlam said humans are not designed for adaptation, and adaptation will cause injustice. And Dr. Mohammed focused on the energy sector and mentioned that it's the highest sector emitting CO2, and gave us statistics and numbers, of course, on that prove and optimism that Jordan will not be able to adapt to climate change in the next 10 years.